When I was very young, when I was between 10 and 12, I started listening to the radio, and I really got into music. And I realized that thing about, when you listen on the radio, you're not choosing the playlist. It's just coming at you. So after about 4 or 5 songs would go by, there'd be that one song that had come by, and you'd go like, oh wow, this song's really good. It's the one, everybody'd always just want to join in and sing the hook, or when you want to move your body to or groove to. The one that when it would get played, the dance floor would get crowded. There's always that one song that really ignites people. People really relate to, they really feel. I always wanted to know. My whole life was figuring out, what is it that gives that song that quality that those other songs don't have? They may be good, but there's that one song that just is head and shoulders above. It just shines. And I was in the place, and I looked around and I said, okay, if I'm in the room with these people, and I cannot understand this thing that I've been searching for, because I mixed live for 10 years prior to getting into a recording studio, and that was my training. That was my education. And I said, I'm never going to be in a place where I can learn it, because this isn't the stuff they teach you in school. This is so beyond taking a class at a university.
Michael Jackson's Thriller album.
Stories in the Room.
This is Michael Jackson's Thriller album, Stories in the Room. Join film composer Anthony Marinelli, who programmed synthesizers for 7 songs on Thriller, and A&R veteran film producer Stephen Ray, who assisted Quincy Jones and was in the studio every day with Quincy and Michael.
Michael Jackson's Thriller album, Stories in the Room.
And that was the moment I said, if through no other process, just then I have osmosis. Just have to absorb everything that's happening in this environment, even if I'm not understanding all of it, because a lot of it's above my head. I didn't study music at a high level. I didn't study music theory. I did get involved. I could play guitar, but I'm not a musician. But this was the place where that thing that I understood, being a live mixer, because the same thing would happen when I would mix live. There'd always be that song that the band would play, and oh man, everybody in the club would want to either be on the dance floor, or they'd all be like into that music. What is it about that song that the other songs don't have? And that was my quest. That has basically been my quest for the largest part of my life, was understanding these things. And that was the thing that I was able to see and observe and watch the process unfold in the making of great recordings. And I never, in my wildest dreams, because I thought, well, I missed the Beatles, so I'm never gonna, they growing up, the Beatles were you didn't get any bigger than them.
Well, are you making any headway in terms of figuring out what it is?
Well, that's just the point. I did learn what it is.
Because we wanted to ask you, because that was on Thriller. That was The Girl Is Mine you're talking about.
That was the tracking date, first day of recording?
One of the questions that Stephen and I had talked about, wanting to ask you is, well, Thriller is now an album of those kind of songs, where there are many of them, yes, of like The Girl Is Mine. So what do you think stands out about Thriller that made it be why we're talking about it now, and why multi-generations still like it and it's still relevant today? What have you discovered in this quest?
Coming up from the technology side of it, because I was the person who was interfacing the technology with the creativity, or the creative side, being the person in control of being the recording engineer.
Perfectly, too. So well.
Well, like I said, I had a lot of practice before I ever set foot in the studio. And I love doing it. I have to tell you, this is something that I feel, people ask you, so when did you choose music? For me, the question was no, music chose me. because there isn't anything else I would rather do. And in college, I was a fine arts student for 6 years. And it was like, okay, I got my fine arts degree. Now I'm going into music. But the thing that I learned was I always ascribed there must be some type of technical thing. There must be something psychoacoustically, or there must be something that's happening that these guys making these great hit records know when they're in the studio, they know these things, and I can learn these studio tricks. And the very ironic part about it is it's not a technical trick. It's an emotional trick. It's in the song. The song has to have the ingredients that you feel. Michael several times would use the phrase, it's not just that you hear it, you feel it. And I worked with Michael for so long on so many of his projects. I would hear him say this to people several times. But it's true. There's something that is born in the creation, in the writing of the song. And as you know, sometimes these songs, you really have to work hard writing the song. And sometimes it's like the heavens open and the song just flows through you. Michael's talked about this numerous times, that it's there. And you have to be prepared, which is why you practice. You do all the studying, you do everything. So it's like being in the World Series, and you're up at bat, and that 100-mile-an-hour object is flying at you. You have to instinctually know this is the one I'm going to connect with, and that's the home run that wins the game. It's got to be that automatic. It's got to be that natural. It's got to be that deep in your emotion, in your soul. I mean, Quincy uses the phrase that you got to leave enough space in the studio for God to walk through the room. That's his way of saying there's this nature to music that is otherworldly.
What we were saying earlier about recognizing the unexpected, because that's when those things drop in on you. And if you're not thinking about it, or like you haven't practiced recognizing it, it'll happen and you'll miss it.
The moment won't flow naturally through you, because that's what has to happen. That's what you're referring to.
Yeah, it's just trusting that, Quincy always talked about that first instinct, because he felt the first instinct is from God.
Absolutely.
And if you listen to that and trust that, that ultimately is what affects, like you would say, the central nervous system.
Yes.
If you move someone's central nervous system, which for him was moving his first,
yes,
and then you're in a room with people like you were, like we were, where everyone's central nervous system was, I like to say, was all aligned. And on so many levels.
Big feat, too.
And that's a very, you can't plan that.
No.
You can't, that shows up.
You don't plan that, but it's kind of like that thing when you are in a relationship, when the synchronicity of the individuals, the people call it vibes. Right. What are vibes? They're vibrations. They're waves, and there is so much. If you go into the study of quantum physics, about everything emanating from vibrational waves in matter, in the universe, in the cosmos, and everything, that it's logical to say, it's that thing that when everybody's in sync, when everybody's kind of like on the same page and everybody's feeling the same thing, and those things come floating by, you go, yep, that's it.
Well, your fingerprint's all over Thriller in that way, because not only did you record the tones, but I think you set the tone for that to happen, because it created an atmosphere where things worked smoothly. So there was really little else on people's mind. The creativity ruled.
One of the things, too, speaking to that, is that what I remember very clearly feeling, and Quincy talk about this is everyone, he felt so comfortable because we knew when we walked into the room, you had everything perfectly set up. The only thing that they needed to do was to sit down, they being Rod, Quincy, and Bruce, and then, then Smelly, well, Michael, who we called Smelly, of course, would come. But the whole energy of the room, there was no worry about anything not working. Or, you knew what song that we were going to start on, they were going to start on. It was all queued up. We knew what musician was coming in. We knew the cartridge was already there. You had already mic'd up everything. It was, so when you start every morning like that, especially when you're working 15, 16, 17-hour days and getting very little sleep, as I know you were, that's having that level of comfort is extremely important, as you know, when you're creating, when you're in creation mode. Because then all you have to think about is creation mode for them.
And a musician shows up and gets to walk into that.
Oh no, that's what I realized. That's what I realized. I was aware of the fact that that's what I was bringing to it, because of all of the training and all of the work. I used to talk to other artists when I was studying, when I was in college, and we talk about creativity and just kind of the essence of the creative thing, because it doesn't matter if you're doing a painting or a sculpture, or you're writing a screenplay or a book, or you're writing a song or a movie, or maybe you're crafting something with technology in the modern day. So much is code writing, but there's that thing about what you're creating, and you are imparting part of your energy, your personality, your emotion, everything about you shows up in that work. And that's what I had become aware of because of all the training I had had. So it was basically all the training I had had in my life brought me to that point. And I feel that was the exact same thing that was absolutely true of Quincy and Bruce and Rod, and most importantly, Michael.
Join us for the next episode of Michael Jackson's Thriller album, Stories in the Room, with your hosts Anthony Marinelli and Stephen Ray. Watch our extended interviews on youtube.com/@storiesintheroom. Audio-only interviews are available on all podcast networks. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok @StoriesInTheRoom. For the latest news and links, visit the website, storiesintheroom.com. This podcast is produced by Christian D. Bruun and David Wolf, recorded by Audivita Studios. Additional recording by Ben Rackless. Edited by Jay Spang and Sean Hedinger. Music by Anthony Marinelli and Stephen Ray.
Michael Jackson's Thriller album.
Stories in the room.